Afternoon, coaches. Welcome to the Locker Room podcast. Two familiar figures again. We've got Ryan Jones and Daniel St. Ledger back with us this week. Very welcome, lads. I suppose we'll start, lads, with the battle at Celtic Park on Saturday evening. I watched the game. I was so impressed, lads, with Dublin. I know it's been used as a very simplistic sort of tool or stick to beat them with, but I thought their ball retention, their level of skill, just the ability to perform the basics, at such a high level, such a high tempo, I thought was a real standout for me, Ryan, on Saturday night from them. But overall, Ryan, super impressed with Dublin. I think people probably forget as well, they are the All-Ireland champions, and sometimes we sort of forget about that, in an extent. Like, they did win it last year, albeit coming out of Division 2, but certainly they seem to be finding their groove, Ryan, and they've got their mojo back.
Yeah, 100% agree, Stevie. I suppose we talked about them the week before where they played Kerry and Croke Park, and it was, free-flowing football, and Dublin can rip you apart playing that way. Obviously, going up against Derry, regardless of what team Derry selected, they were going to be playing against a defensive system, a low block. And look, they made it look very easy at times in how they broke it down. They ended up scoring 116 as well. So Dublin can play anyway, and it's a sign of a great team. They are the All Ireland champions for a reason. What impressed me on Saturday evening was their ability to find gaps in such small spaces. What I
Yeah.
mean by that is the likes of Kilkenny and these boys, the way they can angle their run at just the right moment. They only need a second or two to get their shot off. I suppose the level of, you talked about their basic skills. I also think of Derry, a lot of their game plan is based on one penetrating. There was a moment in the first half where Rodgers got the ball around the middle of the pitch, and you could tell he just wanted to beat his man. Like, Derry's game plan is a lot based on overlaps. Kieran Kilkenny stood him up, turned the ball over, and all of a sudden Dublin are on the attack and probably finish with a score. So the basics, like, we probably, as coaches, we think of fancy drills and different things, and we're wondering what are they doing and what's top counties doing. But Dublin are doing the basics very well. They know how to rip a team apart if they're given space. They know how to break down a blanket defence and work in tight areas if that's the setup that's facing them. And also the way that they tackle their last ditch tackling, and their ability to look at McGarry, generate a score for himself where it looked like he was going to be blocked. He takes a solo dummy, bangs it over the bar. Bulger on his weaker left foot from 40 yards over the bar. Kilkenny can kick left or right over the bar from distance. Fenton. So the basic skills, I don't think we should overlook at how good Dublin are at those.
The flexibility, Ryan, in their scoring is awesome. Like, I just thought, I remember texting a friend of mine just during the match that says, like, the kicking technique that any young fella could learn from Kieran Kilkenny, the way that hook kick technique that he has, like, it's a joy to watch, and the accuracy of them. Fenton kicked a couple of worldies as well, like, and they really, as you said, you nailed it there. Like, it's the flexibility in their play, Ryan. I think that's what maybe separates them from the rest as well. And and ego's parked at the door too. Daniel, you were sort of watching the game, and you mentioned something to me about possibly a little chink in the armor of when they do filter men back, maybe finding themselves in uncomfortable defending situations, certain players.
Yeah, and look, it's probably really nitpicking, but it's kind of something we talked about last week after I know we talked about Paddy McVerdy ending up kind of on his D a couple of times, and for the Derry goal, Paddy Small was kind of floating in between the D and the 45, and like, naturally, some corner forwards won't have that kind. They're pure out now corner forwards, and they wouldn't have that defensive awareness. But when you're defending with that many numbers in your own 45, which for most teams are, like, if let's say you're +1, your centre back Brian Howard was doing it an awful lot of the weekend. He'll look around and he'll see, right, there's that space is covered, that space is covered, that space is covered. He mightn't necessarily be recognizing, oh shit, it's Paddy Small and it's Conor Costello covering those two spots. And for the Derry goal, you could see Paddy Small switching off. He's the only player that switched off, and Derry were able to exploit it and kind of pick them off. Kind of a trend that we saw. Like, I mean, Clifford was coming back in the Kerry Tyrone game. Clifford is floating back around his 45. Like, Clifford is unbelievable footballer, but tackling is not his strong point. He gave away some really sloppy frees there, so he was probably lucky not to get sent off just for accumulation of fouls. In that game as well, Rory Canavan, 3 or 4 head-high tackles around the 45. like I might sound a little bit old school here, but there are certain individuals, inside forwards, leave them do their job, which is what they're good at, which is staying up the field. And look, I know sometimes you kind of, your hand gets forced because teams will bring 14, 15 players inside your 45. But I think with the likes of Clifford, with a Paddy Small, you can afford to take a chance and leave them up. I think you can, because if you have 13 outfield players all defending in the 45, that should be more than enough to plug most holes. And like I'm inclined to say that, let's say someone like a Con could probably play centre back for Dublin and would do it quite well because he has that skill set. But there are certain players don't have that skill set, and it was literally the only time Derry really looked threatening was when they picked off Paddy Small in that hole. It's just an interesting trend you're starting to see,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and Ryan, that is interesting there when Les talks about that. Like, I suppose the other flip side of it too, Daniel, and I want your thoughts on this too, Ryan, is that you have those marquee players like a Shane McGuigan, a Rory Canavan, a Paddy Small. Those are the players that obviously you want to win the game for you, and you want them doing their work in the opposition's half, and having to track back, put tackles in, put hits in, get back up the field, track back. It actually leaves it more difficult then, Ryan, for those players to actually find space and get scores, because they're gassed with the amount of the high speed running they're doing. Would you not agree with that?
No, I agree 100% with what Dan's saying. You could see Paddy Small that time. He wasn't aware of what was around him and where the threats were. I suppose, Stephen, a lot of that though is to do with the opposition. If a cornerback tramps up the pitch, Paddy Small, I know we mightn't want him there from a forward's point of view, but he has to follow. But I felt on Saturday evening, Derry lost a bit of their game plan with the fact that Lynch wasn't in goals. Now, Scullion, not taking anything away from him, he is a good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But we talked the week before about how Derry attack and they play with 15 players because Lynch joins it. On Saturday, I felt they lost a bit of that because Scullion was reluctant to tramp up the pitch as much as Lynch was. So I thought Dublin dealt with Derry man-to-man very well. But if Lynch was joining that attack, then Derry would have had an extra player, is what I'm trying to say. So I think, of course, you want to try and keep your marquee players up top, is what I'm saying. But sometimes they just have to get the sleeves rolled up and track. I think Mickey Hart, to be honest, probably looked at that game and said, look, we're not going to beat Dublin twice in the 1 year. We're probably going to meet them down the line if they're still on course for an All-Ireland. And sometimes, if you poke Dublin, you'll always get a reaction out of them, I find.
Yeah.
So, look at last year, they beat them down in Celtic Park, and Dublin then trounced Derry, really, in the league final. Yeah. So I think Hart was cute in that he thought, we'll just hold back, and down the line, we'll try and do a number on them in an All-Ireland semi-final or whatever it is.
Yeah, no Conor Glass as well. Probably led a big significant blow to Derry on Saturday night, not having him in their starting team. Probably one of the most influential players in Ireland, in both club and county. And obviously, I even felt just having his presence alongside Brendan Rodgers. I actually felt Brendan Rodgers' game suffered just not having Glass as the midfield partner. But it's an interesting one Ryan talks about there, Daniel. Now, looking at the league table now, it's sort of a risky enough one for Mickey too, because if they did decide, right, we're going to use this opportunity here now to maybe blood a few people or whatever, or rest a few guys, and we'll take our defeat if it comes. But it's actually opened Division 1 back up again a wee bit. The Derry could now, Daniel, perceivably miss out on a league final.
Yeah, and I suppose you're doing a risk analysis there. You're thinking, what is more beneficial? Is it more beneficial to get the likes of Lachlan Murray, Game Time, Cormac Murphy, Gilmore, getting these lads exposed to Dublin, who ultimately will be the big game for them at some stage, as you say, later on down the year, or are you risking opening up Division 1? I'm not so sure. Like, I think this is going to come to a head at some stage. We talked about this earlier after the Glen lads came back. Like, when will the kind of cherry pop eventually that they're saying, Jesus, we've an awful lot of work done. I don't know if Conor Glass is an injury or what it is, but I actually don't think it was a bad call from Hart. Like, from a spectator's point of view, I was looking forward to seeing that midfield battle. I thought it'd be brilliant. But in general, I think it's good management. Like, you're exposing your panel significantly to more kind of circumstances where they're out of their comfort zone. And look, Conor Glass has been out of his comfort zone for a hell of a lot, between Australia and between big games here. But I think it's really good for the likes of Lachlan Murray, for as I said, for Gilmore, for Cormac Murphy. These fellas are absolutely, I think the experience you'll garner will be huge, you know, and it probably shows Mickey why he has long term as well. Like, I mean, how are these lads going to react in the white hot heat? You know, because I probably haven't mentioned it yet, but I thought Dublin were excellent at the weekend. I really did. Like, and I know Derry were slightly weaker, but it's irrelevant really, because you look at what Dublin have to come back in. You're still looking at Cluxton, you're looking at James McCarthy, you're looking at Jack McCaffrey, you're looking at Paul Mannion. Like, those four to pop back into that Dublin team is a scary thought, you know.
Scary, yeah.
But no, I think actually Mick would be happy enough, to be honest.
Strength and depth, Ledge, you know, and it's interesting you make that point about Lachlan Murray. Like, Ryan, you played under Rory Gallagher, obviously with Fermanagh too. Rory likes to use a very, very small, tight-knit group of players, and obviously when he was with Derry, the one criticism, as good as Rory was, the one criticism probably would have been that the squad wasn't really, you know, probably stretched as much, you know, for games, and he tended to use, Ryan, the same couple of changes. Obviously Mickey is looking at deepening that squad, because look, a team will win a game, but a squad will win a championship. That would probably be a fair enough reflection, wouldn't it?
100%, Stephen. I suppose because the whole lot's condensed now, you know, you've seen a lot of boys picking up hamstring injuries there. Lee Gannon, there might have been somebody, was there, from the Roscommon Mayo game as well, going for the ball and picked up a hamstring. So what I'm trying to say is, them lads could be out now for 4 to 6 weeks. So you need to have the depth. Championship's not that long away either. So definitely, I feel Mickey Hart realises that the Derry squad, that was one thing they needed to find more players that are able to play at that top level.
Yeah. And Ryan, I suppose moving on, you know, we talked at great length, obviously, about Armagh and Fermanagh, or sorry, Armagh and Donegal last week. You were at the Armagh Fermanagh game, which we're gonna talk about in a wee minute. But on Saturday, I watched Cavan and Meath, and I know you watched it yourself as well. I actually felt, coming from watching Dublin and Derry, the gulf in quality and standard was it was actually frightening. It was nearly like watching two different sports at times. You know, I just thought that it was, especially the first half, Ryan, I thought the volume of turnovers from both teams, very disappointed in Cavan. Now, albeit they still managed to claw a draw out of it when it didn't look likely, but the gap, Ryan, is getting bigger. Would you agree there? Like, definitely between the top 3 or 4 counties and probably the rest, it's certainly widening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Stephen. There is, apart from maybe a few teams that are up and down from Division 1 and Division 2, I would definitely say there's a big difference, you know. And Cavan and Meath probably haven't been a Division 1 team for a while now, and they're probably not even going to get promoted, so they're not in that top 2 even in Division 2.
Yeah.
I felt definitely the pace and even the basic skills. I know we go back to it, but I think basic skills is what really defines, you know, a top class team, and probably a team, you know, a couple of levels off that. Some of the shots, probably the execution of, you know, fist passes and stuff that were simple, I felt were way off what Derry and Dublin was. It got exciting in the second half, but it was probably just because it was more the, you know, the mistakes that each team was making, that it ended up being a frantic nature, especially near the end. But it's interesting, like, if you're able to play and consistently stay, like Monaghan have at that top table in Division 1, I definitely think it helps bring players on and their development. And I feel there's, even you go then 2 to 3, then there's another gap, and 3 to 4 obviously as well. So look, it's something that I suppose Derry and these teams, they want to be playing Division 1 football because they know that's going to increase their chances of competing against the Dublins and the Kerrys for All-Irelands.
Yeah. And Les, I don't know if you've seen the game, but certainly the gap and the gulf, and in particular, Daniel, as well, in Leinster, like, you know, you look at Meath, Kildare, you know, like the Dubs, you know, there's no one who's going to touch them in the Leinster Championship. Like, you know, it probably is a debate for another day about the defunct nature of the provincial system. Like, but certainly, Daniel, the gap between, you know, would you say maybe top 4 or 5? Would it maybe say top 4 or 5? Monaghan starting to slide out of Division 1, Ryan. You know, they're starting to slide out of Division 1, and you know, I think obviously the quality that they're missing, obviously with the likes of Beggan and that as well, and their better players are not getting any younger. But you're probably looking, Daniel, I'd say the top 4 or 5 in Division 1.
Yeah, and like I think you could probably divide that down a little bit further. I mean, I think you probably got, I think the 2 best coach teams currently as it stands are probably Derry and Dublin, with the clearest identity. You can see very, very specifically what they're doing on kickouts, what they're doing on opposition kickouts, offensively, defensively. It's really clear. You go then, let's say your next layer down is Kerry. I think Kerry don't really have an identity as such. I'm not sure they're in this quagmire of, are they a defensive team? Are they playing a +1 with Tyke Morley? Are they man-to-man? You could see them changing their kick-out strategy again at the weekend. They went for zonal press. Tyrone still got out relatively easy. I think Kerry's individual talent is getting them by at the moment. And as you keep breaking that down, I think Mayo are kind of the same. I don't see Mayo getting anywhere close to Dublin or Derry. So I think there's a huge deficiency when you as you break out of that top three. Maybe I don't see anyone kind of cracking that. And look, I think it's the aligning of the coaching mixed then with the conditioning, and for me that's the big thing. And you see it in club football. Like, I'm coming from Carlow, let's say, and you're coming back up, then you're looking at Division 1 league games in Dublin. Everyone can do the same skills under pressure or under no pressure. Everyone can do roughly the same things when they're at their own level, but it's the pace and power is the big thing, and that is what differentiates these players. We talk about Dublin with their basic skills. They can play at a tempo that's right up there for a full 70 minutes, and the skill level doesn't drop. And when you go down to divisions, then the pace might be up there for periods, but the quality will inevitably drop. And I think that's the big difference, is the amalgamation of being able to use that athleticism while mixing in the strategy and mixing in the key skills. I think Meath are quite a decently conditioned team. Kildare are quite a decently conditioned team, but do they have the simple skills and the strategy all together? I think Dublin and Derry have a perfect amalgam of those three things, and I think it's really clear. Kerry don't have it. Kerry have pace and power, absolutely. They have individual skill, but they don't have the clarity of thought in what they're doing, I don't think.
Yeah, that's interesting, Ryan, because I would have said a number of years ago, even Daniel, obviously, having worked for yourselves at Carlow and that, coming up against better teams, it definitely was. And it was trying to get the buy-in, Ryan. I don't know what the culture was like, Ryan, and Fermanagh. I'm sure it was pretty strong, but I know, Daniel, in Carlow, the culture towards S&C was very poor. It was weak as piss, to be honest. And you were begging boys to get to the gym, and really and truly, and that's no indictment of the lads, but there was a group of lads there, Daniel, who would have done the work, who would have got the work done. But at the top level, you're talking about a longevity of conditioning as well. You're talking about, Ryan, we had this conversation before about turnover of players. So the same group of players in Derry, for example, that were there 5 or 6 years ago, they now have 5 or 6 years of really good, strong conditioning levels, at the highest level. Probably an S&C coach that has got consistency, that's been there a while. Julie Davis, for example, with Armagh as a prime example. Players are familiar with her. She's familiar with them. They know the background, the history, the injury profiles, etc. What makes them tick, what makes them work. And surely, from a conditioning point of view, it really, really is where Derry have made massive gains, in my opinion. And I think, Ryan, this sort of stemmed from COVID. I think when COVID, probably shouldn't be saying it on air, but I know it was well documented that Derry were training when everybody else wasn't, and they were obviously making massive gains. And even here in club level, Kilcoo, for example, it was well documented that the likes of Aaron Brannigan would, and these guys would have been training and would have videos up. And you can see even the likes of Keelan Doherty, Micheál Rooney, the difference that they have become. They have now become decent inter-county players because of their levels of conditioning, and would you have had a really good culture, Ryan, and Fermanagh, for example, with the conditioning side of things?
No, in fairness, the culture in Fermanagh would be very good, in my opinion. And Fermanagh are competing in Division 2. They've been very competitive in all the games, bar the second half against Donegal. Armagh are Division 1 team in a lot of people's eyes. They're probably maybe number 4, number 5 as All-Ireland contenders. And Fermanagh yesterday were very competitive against them. So I suppose, Stephen, 100%, if you want to be competitive, if you're a lower level team and you want to be competitive and improve, number one, you got to have players that are willing to buy in for a number of years. It can't be in and out, or in 1 year and miss the next. You got to have players that are saying, we're going to put our shoulder to the wheel here for the next 5 years. We've got a good age profile where we can stick at it for 5 years. We can do everything. S&C is a given. Look at all the condition of them Dublin players. Kilkenny, Fenton. But even the new guys that come in, Lee Gammon's not that long playing inter-county football for Dublin. He's in phenomenal condition. So the S&C is a given. The other thing I would say is Kilkenny and Fenton and these boys, they don't miss many games. They're always playing. We talked about Derry there. I know they had a small enough squad, but you could name Derry's 1 to 15 nearly every day. They're always fit.
Yeah.
They're obviously very robust. They're doing all the gym work. They're looking after themselves off the pitch. So I suppose that's a template for, if you're asking me, for a team that's maybe looking to improve, get up to divisions, as we said, to close the gap. You got to have players willing to buy in, number one, willing to do the S&C, number two, and I suppose then improve your basic skills. Like the thing probably about Dublin is, Dan mentioned it, they're able to do the basic skills very well for sustained 70 minutes, you know. I was chatting to a guy that was involved with the Ireland under-20 rugby team, and he knew what the senior lads were doing. And he says, stats-wise, the under-20s cover the same distance, power plays, all as what the senior lads are doing. But it was the skill under fatigue is what would let them down. And that was from an under-20 point of view. He says, like, after maybe 40 minutes, then their skills then start dropping off.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's what we would probably say the difference between the Division 1 to maybe a Division 3. Division 3 players, just after a while, their fatigue kicks in. And then you've seen it maybe in the second half of that Cavan game. Some of the shots was just it was all down to fatigue, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And Ledge, it's an interesting one because I remember, like, you look at, say for example, when you're looking at the betting on a game, right, and you watch a team and say the bookies are never too far wrong with the handicaps, right? So I take Cork Kerry for example a few years ago. Remember the handicap was 10, right? The handicap was 10, so Kerry were -10 or whatever, right? So they're predicting a 10-point win for Kerry. At half time, there's maybe a point in it, but it's the second half that actually, you know, you're thinking, I think Kerry end up winning the game by 11 or 12, and you're going like, how do they get it so right? But actually what Ryan's saying there is very valid. Like, it actually is the better teams. You'll always compete with a team for, say, 35, 40, 50 minutes, as we've done before, let's do. And then eventually in that last 15 minutes or whatever, you know, even the train of thought, the speed of thought, Ryan talked about that sort of execution of skills under fatigue. It all kicks into gear, big man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you couldn't, I didn't want to bring this up today, but you look at City United yesterday, like, I mean, United looked impenetrable for so long, but City kept hammering, and the openings that weren't there for the first 70-ish minutes eventually started to come, you know, and it's the exact same point. It's very hard, and that's probably why, let's say, if you're purely a defensive team, very hard winning All Ireland based purely on defense. You have to have some outlet on the other side of things as well. And I think that's where Dublin are so superior, is that because they're not turning the ball over 20 plus times a game. Like, if you consider, let's say, a Carlow team with us, let's say, we would have on average been having maybe 18, 19 turnovers a game. For middle third players, right, that could be a 100-meter run each time to get back into defensive set, give or take. So if you have 15 turnovers, that's 1.5 kilometers extra running you have. If you go to a Dublin team who are turning the ball over, I couldn't give you the stat, but let's say 10 times, you know, that extra 500 meters per player is an awful lot when you add that all together. So, and that probably feeds back into your basic skills. If your basic skills are better, you turn the ball over less, your energy is saved for the front foot. So it's I think that's probably a massive advantage. And something else just with Dublin, even, like, I know they do an awful lot of collective gym sessions together, and Ryan, you probably know about this as well. Like, we'd have an awful lot of lads in Dublin, in Cork, in Waterford, or wherever, in college, doing different things and working. We'd have done an awful lot of individual gym together, individual gym on our own. They were doing a small group in Carlow doing it together. Even that collective buy-in, if you have 30 fellas all together doing the S&C, that makes a big difference, because there's a visible responsibility there for everyone to be there, firstly, and for everyone to be getting every single last rep. And look, I don't want to say the gym is the be all and end all, but it's a consistency. And as you said, these younger lads, these 20, 21-year-olds, like the Buglers and the League Annans, who've kind of really starting to break into it now, they probably have 3 years of consistent S&C throughout the year, not just winter time, consistent S&C throughout the year, looking at what James McCarthy's of this world are doing. I think that makes an awful difference, because there's no doubt about it. I do my gym here up in school, you know, when we were playing. It's a lonely enough place to be trying to lash that out 2 or 3 times a week, you know, and small little things like that make an awful difference. And because Dublin have mainly Dublin-based players, they can buy into 2 nights a week collective gym, and I think that makes that makes the collective a lot stronger.
Yeah,
I'd agree 100% with that, Dan. Like, you know, if you're able to get 30 lads together, you might even be able to do 15 minutes video. You know what I'm saying, as well. So it makes it easier for probably the likes of them if they've everyone close by. It's impossible to bring lads from Fermanagh that are based in Belfast and Dublin down for a collective gym session and try and get a bit of video, and it's just not going to happen. So the other thing I was going to point out was that's where GPS stats, and probably from a coaching point of view, we can get obsessed with what GPS stats are reading. You know, you might say, oh, well, down player covered the same amount of distance as a Dublin player, or he covered more power plays than a Dublin player. But if you look deeper into it, maybe sometimes he's covered more distance because he has to make up for errors that maybe his teammate give the ball away stupidly. A lot of them Dublin players, their GPS stats are no better, I've no doubt, than a Division 3 or Division 2 footballer. But it's their skills under pressure. They don't give the ball away as many times, which means there's less so-called stupid running to make up for that.
It's a great point, lads. A great point, and I suppose, lads, just sort of moving on to the games themselves. Some of the games like Kerry Tyrone on Sunday had a sort of an air of inevitability about it, Daniel. Obviously Tyrone don't seem to be firing on all cylinders. We'll chat about Tyrone in a second, but from a Kerry perspective, you were sort of thinking that Kerry, you don't think they'll challenge this year? I think we've lost him there a wee second, have we? We lost Daniel there, have we?
Well, I'll just say, Stephen, one observation until we get Dan back.
Yeah, go on ahead there, Ryan.
Well, I was just going to say, again, we've mentioned this a few times. Kerry are very reliant on the three boys, the two Cliffords and Sean O'Shea.
Yeah.
And at the weekend, Kerry scored 18 points. The three boys, I know they're maybe hit frees and stuff, but the three boys scored 15 of that 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if one of them boys pick up an injury, I've mentioned this before, I'm not too sure Kerry have the depth, and if other players can produce it is what I'm, if they're able to, if other teams are able to do a job on one of the two Cliffords and maybe tie up Sean O'Shea a bit, does Kerry get enough scores all around the pitch? That'd be my fear for them challenging once it comes to All Irelands. Yeah.
Ledge, we got you. I think we might be struggling with his signal there, but Ryan, just on that, just what we're talking there, we're talking about Tyrone. Just all doesn't seem to be well, but at the same time, their next fixture, Ryan, is massive. It's in Omagh. It's home to Monaghan, and you're sort of probably thinking to yourself, if they beat Monaghan at home, it puts them on 5 points, and it may be enough to stay in the division, because I don't think Roscommon are going to get anything out of the Kerry game or the Derry game. Roscommon play Kerry in their next game, and they also play Derry away to Derry in their last game. So it'll take a huge ask for Roscommon to get 2 wins there, Ryan. So you're sort of thinking that if Tyrone were to beat Monaghan at home, it puts them on 5 points, and it probably leaves them safe, because they don't want to be getting into that last day in Croke Park against Dublin looking points to survive. So I think maybe we'll win the next day again Monaghan. It's a massive game for both counties, Ryan. Massive game.
It is, Stephen, and I wouldn't be putting any big money on Tyrone to win that match. If you look at Monaghan there, they got Darren Hughes back on the pitch. McManus, I think, came on. Conor McCarthy came on. So maybe Vinnie Corey is saying, look, we're going after. He's definitely saying this. We're going after that Tyrone match, and I feel Monaghan will go down there with confidence that they can get a result. So I think it's all whoever, as you said, Roscommon's going to go down, and then it's between them two, Monaghan and Tyrone, to see who the other team is. Tyrone probably, if there is such a word as transition, Tyrone are at that stage for me now. Where there's a few other players. We're not seeing Myler on the pitch for whatever reason. He's injured. McGeary's not playing. Matty Donnelly's not playing. He's obviously picked up an injury. And then these younger guys, like young Daly and that, are doing well, but it's going to probably be another year or two before Rory Canavan properly establishes himself in that forward line. So they're at a stage where they're trying to probably establish themselves in Division 1, and I still feel that they're off the likes of Derry for an Ulster title go just yet.
It would be astonishing. Absolutely astonishing, Ryan, if Monaghan pull this off again. Like, astonishing, because they've Tyrone, they've Healy Park, and then they're at home to Mayo, which, like, they are winnable. Like, both games are winnable. It would be a remarkable feat. I think this would probably be their greatest ever escape if they were.
Well, probably if they beat Tyrone, that's looking at the other fixtures. What you're saying, Tyrone are playing Dublin in the last game. Most people who feel Dublin will win that. So I think if Monaghan, they know if they beat Tyrone, there's probably going to be enough. Yeah,
absolutely. I think we're going to get Dan back here. We bit of a problem with his internet there. Hoping to have him back in here, but I think that's him now. But no, I totally agree, Ryan. I totally agree. But it's what about Roscommon? Like obviously such a great year last year, finished 3rd in Division 1. Disappointing this year for them, obviously. I know, having lost a few players, the likes of Cian McKeown's gone. Obviously Enda came into the season carrying a bit of a knock on that as well. Like, so disappointing season so far, Roscommon, Ryan.
Yeah, and their team that they played there on Saturday evening, Stephen, like I wouldn't know all the Roscommon players inside out, but I felt that there was a lot of new players on their team.
Yeah,
and it probably goes back to that point we've made. Like, Derry will always have a very strong team out every week. Roscommon, for me, they had too many players missing. Like, there was no sign of the Daly boys. There was
Daly's gone traveling. One of the Daly's gone traveling, I think.
Yeah, Niall Daly only came on. Only one of the Myrtles was playing. Like, there's a guy, Fitzpatrick, playing corner forward, Dolan and Fallon in the half forward line. They're all pretty new. So I think if Davy Burke wanted to build on last year, he needed to make sure that he still had a really strong squad moving into Division 1 this year.
Yeah. Les, you were going to make a point there. Sorry, we lost you for a few minutes there. You're going to make a point about Kerry. Just go back to Kerry.
Yeah, we're it's funny, we're all about Wi-Fi and ICT in schools these days, and I have one bar up in my classroom, so that'll tell you where we're at in our education. But no, sorry, just in relation to Kerry, I don't want to be tracking back too far here now. I don't know what I've missed, but I was relatively unimpressed by Kerry. I think they look really disjointed. Like, it's their own were I thought equally poor, to be honest with you, but the amount of times that Kerry went back to their zonal press, and the amount of times Niall Morgan was able to pick out people within that press was, I thought, criminal. And even when Morgan went for kind of a 50-50 long, I thought Brian Kennedy, I thought Kilpatrick while he was on, dominated the skies, and that is a worry for Dublin or for Kerry going forward, because if they drop off, they're giving teams possession who are, when you get to the tight end of the year, are going to build scores. If they press up, they're leaving themselves unbelievably exposed. So I think that's a big area of concern. And probably Jack Barry didn't get an awful lot of kudos, I don't think, while he was there, but he's now looking like a really important player for Kerry. So that's something that they'll have to fix. Now, look, they've a couple of months to fix it, because ultimately they'll get through Munster, they'll get through probably a quarter final. But it's when it comes to semi-finals and finals. Like, I'm not talking about a massive differential, but it could be the difference in a goal that could win or lose you an All-Ireland semi-final,
Yeah, it's fine margins as well. Like, I suppose Ryan touched on it there, Daniel, when we lost you for a second there, about the over-reliance on the three lads. Like, there was 18 points scored and 15 of them came from, I think it was Shawnee and the two Cliffords. Is that right, Ryan? Yep. And I think, Daniel, that's a big worry when you look at the spread of scores from Dublin. And it's what my one worry with Derry as well, actually, is maybe that wee bit of reliance on Shane McGuigan. And look, it's a positive when you have a marquee forward. It's a positive thing. I'm not saying that it's it's a negative thing, but I just feel, Ledge, that they're maybe too reliant on those three in particular.
Yeah, it just feels disjointed to me, or something like that. I don't know what it is. Like, I mean, like, Clifford obviously he can kick some miracle scores, but it always seems to be very, very hard work. Like, it seems to be miraculous. Like, you're looking at someone, like, and again, we're not comparing like with like, but look at some of Dublin's scores the weekend. It seemed to be worked into the right position, and it seemed, as you said, a variety of scores. Didn't always have to be Connor, didn't have to be whoever, but it felt more connected. I think the Kerry forward line is probably three unbelievably good individual footballers, but maybe not playing as a collective unit, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I was talking to a fella today in work, and he was talking about why Con is prospering lately, and maybe it's because Pasquale has been out, Cormac Costello has been out. So those two lads are kind of similar to Con. They're scorers. They're in around that kind of scoring zone. Whereas Paddy Small is able to play out a little bit. Kieran Kilkenny's been playing, and Niall Scully have been playing and drifting out and leaving space for your pivot. I think sometimes you've got a lot of the very same in Kerry, and it is a concern. Like, I mean, Clifford is no doubt he's the most skillful footballer I've ever seen, anyway, without a doubt. But he finds himself having to do an awful lot of miraculous things. I think life could be made a little bit easier for him if there was more of a joined up thinking on how Kerry attack.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose he had an off day last year in the All-Ireland final, lads, and ultimately Kerry came up short,
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Ryan. It's true, Well, I suppose, lads, moving out of one, just going into two briefly. Obviously, Ryan, you were at Armagh, Fermanagh. Any takeaways from a coaching perspective, even? Anything you've seen differently that the two teams were doing?
So Fermanagh, a lot of Fermanagh's kick-outs is based on coming narrow and then obviously break out. What Armagh were calling was 4-4. So normally you'll have your three forwards will mark each side. Armagh actually pushed 4 in each side, so it meant that Fermanagh struggled to really get kickouts away into that space because Armagh had matched them and better with numbers. They done a big number on Fermanagh's kickout, and they could have had a goal or two where they turned them over. Fermanagh tried to get it away short, and Armagh squeezed, turned them over. But apart from that, I felt, Stephen, there was probably a bit of shadow boxing. Both teams play each other, I think, in 5 or 6 weeks' time in the championship. Fermanagh actually rested a few players as well. So maybe Kieran Donnelly was looking at the Louth game down the line and seeing that was probably the one game. If they get a result there, they're going to stay in Division 2. Armagh, the one thing for me, Stephen, is I never know what Armagh's best 1 to 15 is. Rian O'Neill done the warm-up but didn't feature. Last week he came on. I kind of thought that would be the start of him now, introducing him into the league and following that into championship. Oisin O'Neill was very good earlier on in the year. He only came on yesterday. Charlie O'Byrne's only came on. So in one way, it's good to have depth in your squad, but I also think you got to have an idea of your 1 to 15, and I'm not too sure if McGeeney definitely knows what that is. Soupy Campbell was very good. Now, one thing about Armagh is they're good at attacking from the wings. We've mentioned that before on previous podcasts, where they isolate the likes of Soupy Campbell on one side. So you can hear the Armagh players shouting overload, overload, and then they all push over to one side. They keep the ball there for maybe 10 to 20 seconds. And then all of a sudden they switch it over to the other side where there's maybe a 2-on-2.
Yeah.
And in fairness, Soupy Campbell coming in off that wing, he's probably one of the best players in the country at it, where he can jink left or jink right and get the shot off.
Yeah, we seen that last week, lads, didn't we? A couple of times, a big switch was on and it would have really, really opened up. And I suppose having that flexibility in attack is so important. I think Armagh probably are at the stage now where, I obviously, being a town man, obviously, Armagh are huge rivals, but I do have a lot of time for them, a lot of respect for them. I like Kieran McKeever, very good friends of Kieran, and I like McGeeney. I like the job he's done there, Ryan. I'm going to be bluntly honest, lads, and I know this might sort of annoy a few people in Armagh. Armagh club football is very, very poor. It's very poor. I've seen a lot of Armagh club teams playing, and the standard is atrocious. And I actually think that Armagh supporters don't genuinely understand the job that McGeeney has done there. McGeeney has genuinely turned them into a really top 10 established team. And for me, we go back to conditioning. They are a well-conditioned team, Daniel. Well-conditioned team.
Yeah, and I always got the feeling that McGeeney turned, and he kind of did something similar with Kildare. He turned the county team into a club setting, and I'd say he practically has first call on those players, and I'd say they'd go to the well from very quickly, and maybe pick their county over their club in certain circumstances, whatever that might be. But it's again, the conditioning piece, we spoke with this before when we went up to play them in that challenge game in 2017, and there was a hell of a lot of work being done by the same amount of players on the back pitch in Crossmidland by a lot of the same lads that are playing currently, and it does take time, and you just have to look at where Armagh were before McGeeney took over, and we played them a number of times over the years, kind of before they really got themselves moving, and nothing outrageous was happening yet, but you could see they were building that base. I still think they're probably, and I don't know if there's anything that McGeeney can do about it. I still think they're probably a couple of players off really challenging that Derry, Dublin, Kerry top table. I think I don't think they're quite there yet. But they're probably maximising what they have, and as you say, given the quality of their club scene, it's probably as good as they are at the moment. I definitely agree with Ryan. It's from week to week, you just wouldn't know who they'd have or what they'd have. They have a lot of very similar middle third players who are all athletic, strong, maybe missing a little bit of craft, and we saw that last week. And we can only comment on what we've seen, but we saw that last week against Donegal when Donegal were well set up. They maybe missing that bit of cuteness, when you compare some of the fast hands with Dublin Derry to weekend, they're missing a little bit of that. But I think all in all, he's done a fantastic job with them, and to get them where they are, I think is a fairly big achievement.
Yeah, I suppose Ryan, Armagh's neighbours, my own county Down, that they've scored 10 goals this year. They've an enormous amount of pace in their team, but obviously Kieran Meena being added to the backroom team has obviously made a massive difference. From a coaching perspective, you can see elements of their game that wasn't really there last year. Have you come across Kieran in your travels, Ryan? Any knowledge of Kieran's coaching?
Yeah, well, to be honest, Stephen, I know that he's highly regarded, and I would have went to a few Loch McCrory games even last year, and just watching, just seeing maybe what he's bringing to the table. From Loch McCrory, you have to remember last year lost to Trillick after penalties,
extra
I think,
time.
In the first round, and Trillick went the whole way to an Ulster semi-final. So really, you could argue Loch McCrory gave them their best game. And let's face it, Loch McCrory weren't really challenging. You wouldn't have put them in the top 4, top 5 teams and thrown up until that point. Yeah. So himself and Luke Barrett were obviously involved there, and I've no doubt they'll be back involved with Lochmacroy later on in the year. So look, Derry, he brought them on. Derry were outstanding last year, even in that defeat to Kerry in the All-Ireland semi-final. So for Down to be able to get someone of his level in as a second in command was, pretty unbelievable. And most counties in Ireland would be delighted to get him.
I think the feedback, Daniel, as well from chatting to a few of the boys that they're really enjoying his coaching. And I think it's the intensity of his coaching. Obviously, that's something he obviously would have learned off Gallagher too. Would Gallagher, Ryan, just quickly, would Gallagher have been a big fan of hard running, like real hard running training? Would Rory have been a fan?
Yeah, everything's flat out.
Yeah, because Kieran's the same, and he'd be a big believer in getting the hard yards done. I suppose, Ledge, there's no secret potion. Like it's hard work, isn't it? Like really,
Yeah, and I think a sign of good coaching is I think like just from the snippets I've seen, Down seem to me have scored the same goal about 7 or 8 times, where it's hard runner through the 45, it's someone coming from width, a second runner coming from the 45, someone coming from width, and it's a palm goal. Like it's nearly the stereo, like it's the exact same goal over and over again. And like as you said, there is no mystical secret to it. But like if looks like it's obviously drill based, something that's been practiced. If you're doing that drill at half pace in training, you'll do it at half pace during the game, and those openings don't happen. But when you've got players that, as Ryan said, are absolutely flat out in training, and you're repeating that 15, 20 times, 2 or 3 times a week, when you come to games, then it's just muscle memory. It's not even thought process. It's just, this is what we do. But the key to that is hard runs. Like if you have a passive run, a lot of those down goals that happen that have occurred probably don't happen because they don't take advantage of the gaps. But it's but as you said, there is no secret. There is no secret. And I think bringing that energy to training, we've spoken about this a good bit. If you can, as a coach, bring that energy, you can make the most simplistic, basic drill. All of a sudden, it comes to life. And I think players love that. I used to love, like, again, I won't be blowing smoke up your arse or anything like that. But when you used to doing bits and pieces with us, and someone would even just a really good pickup at speed. Most coaches don't notice it, but that was something that you used to light on. Say, brilliant pickup, fantastic pickup. It's a really simple skill. But it gave me the thought that, Jesus, that's a really good thing what I've done. And it gives you the encouragement then to, what other good, simple things can I do that'll be impressive? That sort of way.
Maybe feed you a bit of energy.
I think so,
yeah. Yeah. Ryan, as a coach, like from a coaching perspective, like what do you want from your coach? If you're going in tomorrow as a player and you're going to the session, like what do you want? Like you want energy, don't you?
Yeah, well, I suppose everything you do in the training ground will transfer to a match. That's the way I see it. So if you can get players into the habit, as Dan's mentioned, of doing things flat out, then eventually it becomes second nature. If you're a coach standing on the sideline, you don't have to be shouting in at them to go harder, go faster. You can probably stand there with your arms folded, like Jim Gavin, because you know that they have done it in the training ground and it's second nature to them. Like we talk about Dublin being the All-Ireland champions and the best team in the country, but they do things like, if you watch them last-ditch tackling, they don't give up on it. They will fight for every last play to get the ball turned over. The way Kilkenny that we mentioned can tackle one-on-one, that doesn't happen by accident. He's a forward. Most forwards are relatively don't want to tackle. They're lazy as such. And Kilkenny, the way he was able to stand up Brendan Rodgers, one of the best line breakers around, doesn't happen by accident. It's from the training ground, and I've no doubt Mina is there. Down's performances this year have went up another level, and obviously he has demanded that the players are doing everything flat out. There's no excuses, it's all action, and probably the same with McGeaney. Like Armagh a couple of years ago were a Division 3 team. As you mentioned, if you look at the condition of the Armagh players, the pace, the power, the physicality, the fitness, that's just years of coaches constantly onto them, demanding high standards. And, you will get your results. That's the end goal.
Yeah, big message then to our coaches then is train how you want to play, and what you do in training will reflect how you play. That's brilliant stuff again. Division 4 is wide open. I think Wexford beating Carlow at the weekend has really put the cat among the pigeons, and obviously it's going to go down to the wire. I think Laois are home and hose, but I think it's going to could be any one of 3 or 4 teams that get promoted. So we'll chat about that in a couple of weeks when we get back together. But there's break in the National League next week, lads. But listen, thanks very much for your insights. Brilliant insights again, lads, and enjoy the rest of your day, lads. Thank you, bye. Thank you.
Cheers, boys. See you later. Bye bye.